We're going to focus our spotlight on diabetes and related health issues. And we have in studio an endocrinologist who will have this discussion and conversation with us. And if you're wondering, who is an endocrinologist and what is the relationship with diabetes? Well, do stay with us so that you can get, the whole discussion and conversation around diabetes mellitus. And our guest in the studio is Professor Christian Okafor. He is a consultant endocrinologist at UNTH. And good morning, doctor, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, doctor.
I see you're done with everything diabetes,
yes.
World Health Diabetes Day, the one on your T-shirt, so it's obvious you're an encyclopedia of the phenomenon, the health phenomenon. So tell us in plain English, because most times we speak Medicanese rather than English. So in plain words, because I'm sure almost everybody must have heard at one point or another diabetes. He has diabetes, she has diabetes. So in plain English, what exactly is diabetes? I don't want to say diabetes mellitus. I'll be running quite ahead of time, and you are the specialist. So what exactly is diabetes? Well, we'll take it down to what's diabetes mellitus.
All right, diabetes is a word that actually stands for what you might describe as melting down. That you may not understand, but if you go to historical perspectives, it was actually coined when diabetes mellitus was discovered. You may have noticed that there are some diabetic patients who lose so much weight.
Yeah.
And because it was then associated with passing too much urine, it was thought that diabetes is like melting down of the flesh into the urine.
Okay.
Okay, but that is not the only type of diabetes we have. We have another type of diabetes that is called diabetes insipidus.
Okay.
Of course, they all have to do with passing quite huge volumes of urine. Okay, so that is what diabetes actually stands for. Of course, if you pass too much water, you're going to lose weight and so many other things. Okay, now, well, I'm sure I'm not running ahead, but talking about diabetes mellitus, the only difference is that what is passing into the urine for people that have diabetes mellitus is sugar. So when you taste that urine, it tastes sugary. But in diabetes insipidus, it's just water. So the urine is almost tasteless. That's what that word insipid means. So that's actually what differentiates them. And what connects them by virtue of that word diabetes is that passage of excessive urine, okay, which can now affect the person's physical appearance.
All right. I've heard of, since we're now talking about mellitus and insipidus, I've heard of type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Are they like the same words for insipidus and mellitus, or there are other categories?
No. When you talk about type 1, type 2, you are now narrowing down to types of diabetes mellitus.
Okay.
The time will not afford us to talk about insipidus. Okay. That is entirely a disorder that is associated with the pituitary gland, one of the glands in the brain, okay, that also has a connection with the kidneys. So that one purely deals with water regulation and disorders. So when you talk about type 1, type 2, and other types of diabetes, you are talking about diabetes mellitus. Okay, and for type 1, that is the type that you get commonly in children. I wouldn't go into the details of what causes it. But in children, by way of summary, the pancreas, which is the organ in the abdomen that produces insulin, which regulates blood sugar, is somehow destroyed.
The organ itself is destroyed?
Yes, it's destroyed by a number of things. Okay, it could be a viral attack, or generally an autoimmune disorder. And simply that means that for one reason or the other, the body begins to see itself as a foreigner. And so the soldiers we have within the body begins to attack that particular organ. And by way of attacking it, it destroys that organ largely. That the amount of insulin produced is now significantly reduced. So that the blood sugar, which insulin naturally brings down, begins to go up.
You're talking type 1 now,
type
in
1
kids,
now,
predominantly
in children.
kids.
Okay? Now type 2, which is the predominant form, occurs in about 95% of people, usually occurs in adults. Okay, and that one is as a result of so many factors. But again, primarily, the pancreas, which produces insulin, starts becoming dysfunctional, but not to the degree that you have in type 1. While that is happening, the body is also resisting, fighting that little insulin the pancreas produces. So it doesn't respond to it. Okay, these are the two broad mechanisms that causes type 2 diabetes. But there are so many other mechanisms that now have been found to contribute to causing type 2 diabetes. Now, the third broad type is the type that you see in people who may have some other disorders, diseases, that somehow affect the function of the pancreas. Drugs are there, toxins are there, poisons are there. Okay, and then the other one, which you commonly see in pregnant women, that's what we call gestational diabetes mellitus. It's commoner in women who get pregnant. Somewhere along the line, again, the body becomes a bit less sensitive to insulin, and sugar begins to go up. So these are the 4 broad types. But within these 4 broad types, we have so many other subtypes that time will not afford us to go into. And for the sake of understanding of our listeners and our viewers, we can limit it to these 4. Okay, so broadly, type 1 in children, type 2 in adults, then the one that is as a result of diseases of the pancreas and so drugs, some of the drugs we commonly abuse can cause that. And then the one that you see in women who are pregnant, gestational diabetes mellitus.
Okay, such amazing description and explanation to diabetes. But there is a school of thought about some people who believe that obesity can be part of the reasons why type 2 diabetes can come into play. What was your take on this?
Yes, that's quite correct.
Okay.
Okay, you know, I used a broad word.
Yes.
When I say that the body is not too sensitive or resists the insulin that is in the body. So, well, we've said that we don't want to use too much of medical terms.
Yes.
But that's what we call insulin resistance. So I think the words can explain themselves. Now, obesity comes in as one of those disorders that can cause insulin resistance. So that is the connection between obesity and type 2 diabetes. And you know that obesity is mainly a disorder that has to do with excess fat accumulation. Some people may just look at it as weight. No, it's more about the amount of fat that you have in the body. Okay, and then some of that fat, depending on where they're deposited, especially the type that you have deposited in the abdomen, okay, that is more toxic. So this puts on together to resist, to make that insulin remaining in the system not to be too effective, and then the blood sugar begins to go up.
Okay, so we're still discussing diabetes and associated health issues. What other health risk factor do people with diabetes stand to get if not properly treated?
All right.
Or can I put it this way?
Okay.
What are the predisposing factors that could lead to diabetes? We've mentioned obesity. We've mentioned drug abuse. Are there other predisposing, factors or habits that can actually point someone or put someone on the road to diabetes?
Yes, there are. And we usually group these risk factors into 2. The first group we call non-modifiable risk factors. That means it's part of your nature. You may not be able to change them. An example is gender. And when you talk about
there's
gender,
a gender that is more predisposed.
Which of them?
The men.
The male gender
male.
is more predisposed. It's not that it is not.
Does it have to do with their hormones?
Well, part of it. Okay. But when you talk about hormones, yeah, it's part of it, because in women, especially when they're within the childbearing age, they have some protection from their hormones in terms of cardiovascular disorders. So you can't change your gender, your age as you get older, your race, black race, at least. Then, well, there's another personality disorder sometimes that are also associated with diabetes. That is what you call the type A personality. Now, these are people
so there's
that
a psychosomatic that causes diabetes as a response. Like there's a psychological predisposing factor that could cause diabetes.
Yes.
Who are the type A's?
Well, the type A's, let me just describe them as the perfectionists.
Cholerics.
Well, let us not go into
I'm still dazed because I understand we've had a lot of medical people, come in and talk with us, and they'll mention maybe social, predispositions, habits, nutrition,
drugs. We're coming to that.
Yes, we are, but I'm a bit shocked that there's a psychological predisposition that could actually make someone become diabetic, and I want you to just
that will increase your risk.
That's why he's intentional about asking. Tell us about type A. Please tell us about these people.
Well, these people, there's nothing about it. Just these people that are very meticulous.
So does it produce a particular kind of hormone?
Yeah, because sometimes they are more prone to stress and psychological imbalance. Okay. Such people are the type that I want this thing here, it must be here. Shift this thing by
an inch.
An inch is a problem. The person gets angry, shouts, gets worked up. When you are worked up, there are hormonal responses within the body that also counters your sugar regulation. So that when you live with that over a long time, it could predispose you.
Wow.
Okay, to your blood sugar going up.
Okay, so now, what's the link between diabetes and depression? Is there a link between them? Because
the same thing.
The same thing?
Yes. Because when you are depressed, it's about the state of the mind. The mind is not happy. Okay, so there are also hormonal responses to that your depressive state. And a lot of these hormones do what we call counter-regulation. So they tend to push up your blood sugar, your blood pressure, and so many other things. Okay, so that is...
Okay, let's bring up another variable into this conversation. Before I call the name of this culprit, I had a friend who were concerned about her weight. She was just gaining weight indiscriminately. And then by the time we knew what was happening, it turned out that the weight was as a result of increase of cortisol or something. She had an issue with her hormones regulation. And then I know I've listened to someone talk about feel-good hormone, the serotonins, and then this cortisol thing. So what is the relationship between insulin, cortisol, diabetes, and probably obesity?
Okay. Well, we're going deeper now. I hope
we'll try to make it simple.
During your introduction, you were talking about an endocrinologist.
Yes.
An endocrinologist is somebody who deals with hormonal disorders.
Okay.
There are different organs in the body that produces these hormones. And without the hormones, I'm sure there will be no life. Okay, so when you come to sugar regulation, insulin is the key hormone that regulates your blood sugar, that tends to bring it down, because once you eat and the body digests the food, particularly carbohydrates, your sugar must go up. Every human being, even you that don't have diabetes, your sugar must go up. But it is the function of that hormone to sense the height of the blood sugar and be able to bring it down gradually to where it's supposed to be. At the same time also, the sugar can also go below the level. Okay, just like you drive a car. Your car has a fuel tank. You fill the tank, And sometimes when you want to really fill it to the brim, they will tell you that it is going into the reserve. That's how God designed the human body. The sugar we're talking about is actually the source of energy for the human body. So God has designed us in a way that you have some energy stores for you to be able to keep going at those moments when you are not taking in food. Okay? So the hormones whose duty it is to bring up your blood sugar level when it goes low are cortisol,
excuse me,
that you're mentioning.
Okay, when your blood sugar is lower
than, yes. Because the issue about blood sugar is that your brain actually depends on glucose. That's the primary fuel for the brain to function. So the body doesn't want to run into that risk where the brain becomes dysfunctional. We are driving modern cars now. When I was a small boy, we still those Ojo for analogs as they may be. But lately, we started hearing about brain box.
Yes.
And once you plug the brain box of any vehicle, that vehicle is grounded. Yes. So that is how important the brain is to the function of the human body. So God, in his own infinite wisdom, had made a provision that there shouldn't be at any time that the blood glucose level should go lower than what is needed to support the brain. So when that happens, the body stirs those hormones or releases those hormones to bring up glucose from the stores you have in the body already.
From the reserve.
From the reserve. And those reserves, the fat is part of it. There is another reserve form that is called glycogen that is also part of it. So when you take excess sugar, the body takes what it needs at that moment and converts the excess to that storage form, the glycogen, and then if it's still in excess, it goes to convert it to fat. And that is the connection between eating too much and getting fat. So it is the sugar, excess sugar, that the body converts to fat. Now, when the blood sugar goes low, what does it? It now falls back on that store, begin to bring it up. So you have cortisol there, you have another hormone called glucagon there, you also have growth hormone there, you also have epinephrine and norepinephrine there. So you have about 5 hormones that can bring up your blood sugar level, as against one that can bring it down. So that shows you how important and how dangerous it could be for your blood sugar to go low. So that's where cortisol comes in. Now, when you now talk about cortisol disorders, there are clear-cut disorders where you may have cortisol excess. Okay? And if you go through the body biology, most of these hormones function within a chain, what we call an axis. So, for instance, the cortisol you're talking about is produced by an organ in the abdomen, in the stomach, called adrenal gland. But that adrenal gland is under the influence of the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. So that chain must be intact for these things to work. I don't want to go deeper than this. Okay, so if there is any problem on its own in that axis, for whatever reason, you have a tumor in the brain that elaborates too much cortisol, then you have hypercortisolemia, and that also is a hormone that can cause insulin resistance. So you can now see the connection between it and blood glucose.
All right, Prof. Wow. Before we I just, in 2 minutes, World Diabetes Day. It's so impossible for us not to notice you putting on the face cap and the T-shirt. So 2 minutes, just tell us about World Diabetes Day.
Yeah, World Diabetes Day is a day that has been earmarked by the United Nations for us to create awareness about diabetes and the problems associated with it. Okay, and it's actually built for November 14th. But for us in this field of practice, a day is not enough. So we take the whole of the month of November to carry out our advocacy whenever the opportunity comes. Okay, so the November 14th actually was just a day that was picked to remember is actually the birthday of one of the men, Frederick Banting, that discovered insulin.
Wow.
The discovery of insulin in 1922 was the turnaround point for people who had diabetes. Before then, diabetes was a death sentence until that discovery was made. So, and then from there, further developments began to come up to get us to where we are today. So that's what Diabetes Day is actually all about.
All right. Thank you
so
Professor
much,
Christian Okafor, for sharing your time and expertise. We appreciate your contribution to the diabetes community. And of course, diabetes affects a lot of people, millions of people in the world right now. So please, awareness is key. Just like I said, one day is not enough. So please do make sure that you do your test, you get tested, you know your status, as people say. Thank you very much once more for coming.
Thank you so much, Prof.
You're welcome.
Yeah.